on January 17th. I now call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
With pleasure. Councilmember Hedges.
Here. I need longer arms.
Councilmember Lorraine.
Here.
Councilmember Newsom.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash.
Here.
And Mayor Lee.
Here.
Thank you.
We are excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be here in person and participate virtually. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, please complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to our city clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you will be called on at an appropriate time. And if calling in via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close public comment period for each specific item. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Deputy Clerk, would you please read the consent calendar?
With pleasure, Mayor. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. If discussion is desired, that item may be removed and considered separately. Item number 1, Parks and Recreation Department position reallocation. Item number 2, on-call building support services, agreements, and budget amendment. Item number 3, on-call historic evaluations for various projects, agreements. Item number 4, 2022-23 Community Development Block Grant Project, appropriation and agreement. Item number 5, Second and El Camino Parking Garage Elevator Modernization Contract. Item number 6, Delaware Street Relief Sewer Interagency Amendment. Item number 7, Wastewater Treatment Plant Immediate Action Projects Package 2 Amendments. Item number 8, Utility Dump Trucks Purchase Contract. Item number 9, California State Library Services and Technology Art Appropriation. Item number 10, Business Tax Audit and Discovery Services Agreement. Item number 11, Tree Pruning, Maintenance, and Emergency Removal Services Agreement Amendment. Item number 12, Boards and Commissions and Council Liaison List. Add an appointment to the Appointment and Liaison List, confirm eligibility list appointments, and establish appointment subcommittee for commission recruitments. And finally, item number 13, Marina Lagoon Fill Pump Overhaul Change Order.
Thank you so much, Deputy Clerk. If any member of the public would wish to comment on any of the consent calendar items, now would be the time to make your comment. This is for consent calendar items only.
Online, we have one speaker in-house here, and online, if I see one hand raised, if you're intending to comment on the consent calendar, please leave your hand up. If you are not, if you could lower your hand at this time so we know which item you're going to raise your hand on. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening again, Council. My name is Lauren Fitzgerald. I'm going to keep this super short and sweet, but usually I'm the person in my family who comes to the council meetings and is making comment and trying to be out there in the community. But I will say that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because on the consent calendar tonight is my mom for an appointment to a commission. And I just want to say I'm very, very proud of you, Mom. I know you're watching on Zoom right now. I would strongly recommend that you go through with appointing her, and she'll do great things. And I know, because I've known her for 18 years. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all the speakers we have.
well, anyone who's related to one of my favorite young people in San Mateo has an extra blessing for me. So thank you for that. Would any council member like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Seeing and hearing none, we open for public comment.
You just,
Oh, wait.
you just
Oh.
took public comment.
Oh, we just did public, right? Good point.
You want a motion?
So, yes, I would like to call for a motion on the consent calendar. And do I hear a motion
I
on the
make a
floor?
motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Madam?
Thank you. Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Councilmember Hedges,
Yes.
Councilmember Lorraine,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes. Congratulations to our new commissioners. Madam Clerk, do we want to swear them in? Well, if they're online, or would we wait
It would be, I notified them that we would do that after the meeting.
after the meeting?
Yeah, we'll do it when they come in for their orientation.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, let's see. So next, we will open public comment for members of the public wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. You may address the city council at this time. State law prevents council from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. This public comment section is generally limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, that is subject to council's discretion and can be extended if council wishes to do so. If needed, an opportunity for additional public comment may also be provided later in the agenda. So this is the time for public comment that is not on the agenda.
Madam Mayor, I have one speaker slip. Salil Ugar.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. It's my first time here. Thank you all for being here. I'm here on behalf of B Street in San Mateo, just regarding the closure of B Street that's been since the pandemic, I believe. I'm here from Porterhouse Restaurant. It's my dad's restaurant, so I'm here since he can't be able to make it. And then also from Mountain Mike's on B Street. And we just wanted to bring up the issue of the closure on B Street and perhaps reopening the street since it's pretty much a ghost town. And if you walk down B Street, especially between First and Second Block, where we relocated to, it's a complete ghost town from like 4 p.m. onwards or 5 p.m. onwards. And a lot of the businesses have actually closed down there, unfortunately. Just walking by, there's a whole bunch of just for lease or for sale for lease. So a lot of businesses closed down. So we just wanted to bring the attention to you all to potentially reopen B Street. Just kind of like the other streets in San Mateo. My brother owns Pausa in San Mateo, and you know, 4th Ave is open, but then they also can get a parklet. So perhaps, you know, doing the same, having a parklet, but reopening the street would be amazing. So if there's anything that you all can do, we would really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll close public comment. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So moving on to our first public hearing item, number 14, downtown parking and comprehensive fee schedule update. We have a presentation from our principal transportation planner, Sue Ellen Atkinson. Welcome, Sue Ellen.
It should.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Lee and City Council members. My name is Sue Ellen Atkinson. I'm the Principal Transportation Planner with the Public Works Department. And I'm here tonight for an update to the comprehensive fee schedule for downtown parking. So first, I just wanted to give an overview of our parking ecosystem in our downtown area. We have both short and long-term parking. Short-term is generally 3 hours, long-term is 10 hours, available in 2 zones in our downtown core. We have the core zone, which is the premium or more expensive area. And then we have the periphery zone, which is the outskirts generally of the city. We call that the value zone. It's lower price. For on-street parking in the core, it's $1.50 per hour. In the periphery area, for example, it's $1 per hour. We also have monthly parking permits available for downtown employees. Within the core area, it's $100 per month. And the periphery area is $65 per month. And then we also have a low-income monthly permit and low-cost parking options for those who qualify, and that's at $40 per month. And the low-income permit is available at all of our facilities. Generally, the downtown parking pricing structure is priced to encourage residents, visitors, employees to park on the outskirts of the city and then walk into the downtown core, and ideally to park once and then walk. We price the parking on the exterior of the city a little bit lower, and then price the middle of the downtown a little bit higher, again, to encourage that parking once and walking. We do have the long-term vehicle storage available in our garages for employees or for those who are there for a longer period of time. And we price the off-street garages less than on-street so that we can try to have that turnover on-street for visitors, for short-term parking needs, et cetera. So just a little visual of our downtown off-street parking. The orange garages are our Central and Main Street garages, and those are our core garages. The green hash-marked parking garages and lots are our periphery lots. And then tonight we're here specifically to talk about the new Kiku Public Downtown Garage. Hang on. There we go. Which is the blue circle that just appeared on the screen. So the Kiku Public Downtown Garage is part of the Mid-Penn Affordable Housing Project that's a joint project with the city. It began construction in January 2022. It's rapidly coming online, and this we expect to have that available this spring. There will be public parking available at that garage, so we do need to add it to our downtown parking environment for paid parking. The location is east of the downtown core. Again, it's an ideal location to encourage parking once and walking. The land uses around it are primarily office and housing, both affordable and market rate. The project is being built on 2 former surface parking lots that were both 10-hour parking, and they were at that time our only lower cost parking options. So the recommendations to add the Kiku Public Downtown Garage to our paid parking structure are to make the full garage 10-hour parking. That would mean you can park anywhere from a few minutes up to 10 hours. So it's very inclusive, both for those who are visiting the housing and also for employees at the offices nearby. We propose to have permits accepted throughout, and those are those monthly permits that are available. So again, it prioritizes the periphery area for long-term parking, that up to 10-hour parking, but it also allows for that short-term visitor access. We are proposing to include the Kiku Public Downtown Garage in our periphery zone and to have those low-income permits available as well. So again, just a visual of where that location would be. And if the staff recommendation is approved, it would appear as a green hash mark on our parking map for downtown. So to summarize, the staff recommendation is to adopt a resolution to update the adopted 2022 to 23 comprehensive fee schedule, downtown parking pass fees and hourly parking fees to include the Kiku Public Downtown Garage. And that would be in our value area with a monthly permit at $65 per hour or per month, I'm sorry. Again, the low income permit would be available for $40 per month for those who qualify. And then it would be added to our value off-street facilities at 75 cents per hour. And with that, I'll conclude staff presentation, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from council? Councilmember Hedges.
So in the Kiku parking garage, am I right to believe that the tenants will be parking there and that they'll have a charge for it?
No, there are several levels as part of the garage, and the tenants will have residential parking that is separate, part of the same facility, but it's separate floors and no charge for the residents.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you. Good news.
What is the ratio of parking to residences? Meaning, if you have a 2-bedroom apartment, do you get 2 parking spaces, or is there 1 parking space per unit, or how does that work?
I would have to pass that to Assistant City Manager Kathy Kleinbaum.
So there's actually fewer parking spaces than there are overall residential units. So there's 164 dedicated residential spaces and 225 total residential units being built, and how that's allocated will be determined by Mid-Penn Housing, who's going to be the long-term owner and operator. It'll depend a little bit on demand among the residents. They're definitely going to plan to promote this as a limited parking property when they're seeking out tenants. So try to encourage as many tenants as possible who don't have cars to choose this as a preferred option. So I think it's unlikely there'd be more than 1 parking space dedicated for any singular unit, but I think that sort of depends on the overall demand in the facility.
Thank
you. Deputy Mayor Nash.
Thank you, Mayor Lee. I had a question, Sue Ellen, about how did we come up with the $165 monthly parking permit rates in the beginning? This is more education for myself, because it seems to me that those are both high value.
That's a great question. Prior to now, the last pricing update for downtown parking was in 2018. At that time, we increased our hourly parking rates, and we also increased the monthly permit rates. We do price the monthly permits slightly lower than it would cost to park hourly every day during the month during which we have paid parking. And that's to encourage or to have available an option for those who are frequently traveling to the downtown to have that monthly permit and not have to pay each time. So at that time, we did calculate based off of the hourly rates within the core area and the periphery area. I do want to note that currently on our work plan, we do anticipate revisiting the downtown parking rates during this year. So that will be an item that will come back to council in the future.
Thank you very much. I think that would be a very valuable analysis.
Councilmember Hedges, did you have another question?
I actually have 2. So the tenants, if they do happen to have a vehicle but not a space available, can they lease a monthly space?
The monthly permits are valid. The current way that we operate monthly permits is that they're valid during our paid parking hours, which in the downtown are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Generally, residents have parking needs that extend beyond those paid parking hours, so 6 p.m., overnight, et cetera. Right now, we do not have overnight residential parking in our parking garages. That's something that we're also exploring, particularly for the needs of this garage. But we do, to answer their question, we do currently have downtown residents who purchase monthly parking permits to utilize that daytime paid parking. That would certainly be an option. Parking permits are available on a first come, first served basis. So they would be available. However, after 6 p.m. And during the overnight hours, they're not applicable.
Yeah, I think it would make sense for somebody to be able to park 24 hours and probably give us more revenue for parking.
That is something we intend to explore.
The other question I have is really not focused directly on this, but I was just curious. I know in doing some study on BART parking spaces in the multiple floor garages they have, it costs them between $60,000 and $80,000 per space. And I'm wondering, since we already own the land, what we had to expend for this particular parking garage for space between us and Mid-Penn.
That again, I would direct to Kathy Kleinbaum.
I don't have the number exactly on the top of my head. I think the overall cost of constructing the garage, I want to say, was roughly 18 million maybe. And the garage in total has 690 parking spaces. The city committed, in addition to the land, $5 million out of our parking in lieu fund to fund the garage, and the rest is being financed overall by Mid-Penn Housing. I do want to add to the question you had just prior, if I may. We have committed already to Mid-Penn to looking at a shared parking arrangement for residents overnight. And so we are going to be exploring a sort of overnight shared parking permit for residents. And I think one of the aspects is that we are exploring is whether it makes sense to extend that beyond the residents of the Kiku Crossing project and maybe to other surrounding downtown residents that may need it.
I think that would be good for them, and also the central neighborhood who is worried about people parking and in the homes that are near the garage. Thank you.
Any other questions? At this time, we can open it up for a public comment.
If you intend to comment on this item, which is item number 14, downtown parking comprehensive fee schedule update, please raise your hands. I have no in the house speaker slips. And I have no hands raised.
We will close public comment. Would anyone care to start with remarks?
So I think the report was good. I liked the answers to my questions, so I'm fine.
Great.
I represent District 3, and the northern part of my district is Central Neighborhood. They've already expressed concern that there's going to be more cars than there are parking spaces. I just would like us to, if possible, fast track the idea that people can, rent the other spaces and look at options for being able to park overnight there, because I foresee that being a problem. It's definitely a concern of the neighbors, and I just want to make sure I go on record as saying I hear the neighbors, and we should try to address it.
Would anyone care to make a motion or have any comments?
I will make the motion to approve the parking fee schedule as presented by staff.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash,
Yes.
Councilmember Lorraine,
Yes.
Councilmember Hedges,
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Moving on to old business, item number 15, confirmation of actions taken under emergency proclamation. We have a presentation from our city manager, Drew Corbett.
Thank you, Mary Lee. We'll give Martin a second to get the presentation up.
And thank you, Sue Ellen.
All right. Thank you, Martin. So good evening, Mayor Lee, members of City Council. Tonight is an update on our emergency proclamation, as well as our response to the recent winter storms. So as overview, this is just a preliminary update on the status of our emergency proclamation and an update on kind of some of the actions we've taken in response to the recent storms. This is not our comprehensive analysis. We committed to doing a full postmortem of particularly the December 31st response, but then since then we've had several subsequent storms that we want to look at comprehensively. We have already brought on a third party to start that analysis. We're starting predominantly with looking at what happened with the lagoon, and then we'll work upstream from there. We will bring that back when the report is finished and we've had a chance to do some community engagement. We are currently still in emergency response mode. We did get some good news today that I'll share later, that hopefully we are past the worst of this and can move into some drier weather. But again, I'll comment on that in a few minutes. So, prior to the storms, I want to talk about what do we do to get ready for wet weather? And that really starts in October as our wet weather prep. We do have 260 miles of sewers and 130 miles of storm drains. So when we are getting ready for winter storms, some of the things our Public Works Department is doing is clearing out catch basins and trash racks. They're removing leaves and debris. They're preparing our pump stations. They're managing the lagoon. The lagoon is drawn down to the winter operating level. And then right about now during the year, it's drawn down to the dock maintenance level. And then we also operate a 24/7 public sandbagging station. And so just for context in terms of kind of the storms that we've seen recently versus kind of what we've seen in the past. So on December 10th and 11th of 2022, so just a few weeks before New Year's Eve, we saw a pretty significant storm and we received about 1.6 inches of rain. That's a significant amount of rain. That is a pretty heavy duty storm for us to get. Other than some localized flooding with some of our storm drains that have trouble with that kind of volume of water, we did not experience any flooding or any impact like we had on December 31st. So I think that just provides some context about what we saw on December 31st. So on New Year's Eve, you can see on the left, we've got the forecast from the National Weather Service. And this was the forecast for rain for the region that started 4 p.m. December 30th and ran through a 36-hour period to 4 a.m. on January 1st. And you can see out on the coast of San Mateo County, they were looking at about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of rain, not quite as much inland where we are. Or Bayside where we are. So we were expecting inch and a half based on the existing forecasts. What we saw was 5 inches of rain. And that came from about 3 in the morning on December 31st, over about 17 hours to 8 p.m. On December 31st. It rained and it rained hard. And what ultimately we learned from National Weather Service was we had thought earlier in the day that the rain was going to taper off in the early afternoon. Early afternoon became late afternoon became night. The storm basically came and parked itself over the peninsula and over San Francisco. And we got a tremendous amount of rain over a relatively short period of time. We've already done some hydrology work. We brought in someone to take a look at the amount of rain that we got. And what we received in certain areas of San Mateo equates to a 100 to a 200-year storm. So just for context, a 100-year storm means that in any given year, there's a 1% chance that we're going to get that kind of storm. So this was a significant and generally unprecedented amount of rain that we got over a pretty short period of time. Next slide, please. So on New Year's Eve, as I said, the rain started about 3 in the morning. We had crews in starting at 5 in the morning. After they had already, again, they had prepared for the storms. We were ready for rain. We knew it was going to rain. The forecast called for it. But the rain was much heavier than we thought starting earlier. But we did have a full crew in starting at 5 a.m. on the 31st. So typically off operating hours, if there is a call for service for Public Works, it goes to the non-emergency dispatch line in the police department. On New Year's Eve, dispatch received 1,300 calls for service. That's about 3 times the normal amount for that day. In addition to our Public Works crews, we also had San Mateo Consolidated Fire and the police department out helping in any way they can. We were doing traffic controls. We were putting up barriers. We were closing streets where we could. Basically, that we were trying to triage and hit the most important areas that we could, given the amount of rain that we were getting. This includes our police and fire department combining on 2 water rescues for stranded vehicles due to the floods. Again, going back to kind of how I started this, we know that many areas flooded, and we are working to evaluate exactly why that happened and what we can do to address the potential for extreme events in the future. And again, we'll come back with that for more thorough report as it is complete and as we have an opportunity to do community engagement. So the entire region was impacted by this storm. On December 31st, as I mentioned, we operate during the winter months, we operate a 24/7 sandbag station at the corporation yard. On December 31st, the corporation yard flooded. We had to move the sandbag station over to Beresford temporarily. And then after the storm, with 2 more significant rain events projected over the next week, we did a couple things. Number one, us along with everyone else along the peninsula in the Bay Area, we're looking for sand and looking for sandbags. So our staff did a tremendous job procuring sand. We had staff drive up to Sacramento twice to get sandbags so that we could support the community. We opened up a sandbagging station over at Shoreview as well, also operating 24/7 in addition to the corporation yard. So in a typical winter, we will go through 5,000 sandbags for the entire event, for the entire winter. For these series of events, we've gone through 15,000 sandbags and 500 tons of sand. So 1 million pounds of sand just for the storms over the past couple of weeks. So significant response in that. And again, I want to commend staff for the work that they did to make sure that we could have the sand and the sandbags available in order to protect things as best as possible given the wet weather. So after December 31st, there were 2 more, it's basically rained almost every day. We've got a couple of dry days over the past 18 days, but it's been pretty wet, obviously. But after December 31st, there was another storm projected for January 4th and 5th that was initially projected to bring about 3 to 4 inches of rain. And then another storm the following Monday, which I believe would have been January the 10th. Because of the events of the 31st, we did decide to open up our emergency operations center for both of those storms to make sure that we could be as prepared as possible and responsive as possible. We proclaimed a local emergency at the last council meeting. We did things like preparing to preemptively close roads. We staged barriers and other equipment in certain locations to make sure that we could respond as best as possible and as quickly as possible. We set up City Hall as an evacuation site and a temporary shelter. And then we brought the lagoon levels down further to the dock maintenance levels. Typically, again, we're going to do that on January 15th. We did bring those down earlier. We brought them down as low as we felt like we could safely bring them down and while also ensuring that we didn't damage the pumps. We have 5 pumps that are running to send water out of the lagoon, and we wanted to make sure that those remained operational. Let's see, next slide. Okay, so good news was the sheer volume of rain that we were projecting or that was forecast for those 2 storms did not materialize. It still rained a lot, but we didn't get the 3 to 4 inches, thankfully, that was projected. We were in more of the 1 to 2 inch rain, in 1 to 2 inches of rain. But what we were seeing was because of the saturated ground, we've seen a lot of trees come down, as you can see by this slide. These are some of the trees that have come down, including if you look in the bottom left, you see a tree that came down that impacted the playground at Central Park. So overall, our Parks and Recreation Department handled over 40 fallen or damaged trees. And additionally, our Community Development Department, they've also been putting in quite a bit of work in preparation for the storm. They went out and did inspections at construction sites to make sure they were safe. And also they were involved in the Emergency Operations Center. We had building inspectors available 24/7 to ensure that any potential damage to buildings could be inspected and potentially red tagged if needed. Fortunately, we did not have that circumstance, but we were prepared for that. Next slide. So just going back to the lagoon briefly, as I mentioned, in response to the New Year's Eve storm and what we heard from the community, we did bring those lagoon levels down to the dock maintenance levels, as I mentioned. And we are continuing to be engaged with the folks at the lagoon in an attempt to make sure that the rains that we've gotten have not overwhelmed the lagoon the way that it was on New Year's Eve. Another thing that we did, and a couple of pictures here of our public works crews out doing what they do to prepare for and address the storm impacts. When we opened up the Emergency Operations Center, one of the things that was a real struggle on New Year's was, again, the 1,300 calls to dispatch. And so when we opened up the Emergency Operations Center, we set up a 24/7 operation for Public Works, and that was both a field operation that was operating 24/7, but we also set up a dispatch, a specific Public Works dispatch 24/7 to support that. We also stood up very quickly an online tool that would allow people to report storm issues quickly online, which we thought was very effective to addressing things as quickly as possible. So since New Year's Eve, we've been able to respond to all of the storm-related reports, including clearing out 11 stormwater pump stations, clearing 42 trash racks, and over 5,800 catch basins. And as you can see by the photo on the left, there's a lot of debris and different things that we were needing to get out of the trash racks and the catch basins to ensure that our creeks could continue to flow. We also, our wastewater treatment plant is another 24/7 operation. So during dry weather, the wastewater treatment plant sees about 11 to 12 million gallons of wastewater a day. During a typical wet weather event, that number is going to go up to about 20 million gallons a day. During the New Year's Eve event, we were pushing its capacity, which is 60 million gallons a day. So a significant amount of water was coming in and being treated at the wastewater treatment plant. Obviously, one of the issues that has led to our clean water program, our $1 billion program to rebuild the wastewater treatment plant and the entire collection system, including building an underground storage tank, were sanitary sewer overflows, right? When there's a significant wet weather event, our sanitary sewer lines get overwhelmed and they cannot handle the amount of water, which leads to overflows. We did have overflows. We continue to have overflows during heavy wet weather events. But within the next couple of years, when our plant is online, as well as our underground storage tank and our conveyance system, those sanitary sewer overflows should be a thing of the past. Next. Actually, sorry, take it back. We're still on that. Sorry. One other special operational effort has been monitoring the creek, San Mateo Creek specifically. Portions of that creek flooded over New Year's Eve. We've been working since then very closely with Hillsborough, with the county, and with the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. The SFPUC manages the Crystal Springs Reservoir. They let out water on a regular basis through San Mateo Creek that flows down to the bay. While the city manages the creek itself, we manage making sure it's clear of debris and helping ensure water can flow. We don't control the water that goes in. And the water that goes in comes from three sources. It comes from Crystal Springs, it comes from rain, and it comes from runoff. The level of the reservoir has increased significantly over the past 18 days with these rains. As of today, there was about 2 feet of capacity in the reservoir before it spills over. And if it spills over into San Mateo Creek. Fortunately, we're looking at a patch of dry weather. And I did mention earlier, there was some good news. The good news is that we did meet with the SFPUC today, and they indicated, even with some wet weather projected for tomorrow, that they are not projecting any spillovers through the remainder of the month. I think with projected wet weather past Thursday, hopefully they'll be able to draw that level down through controlled releases in San Mateo Creek and get the reservoir down to a level that can sustain any further wet weather events. So that is good, but it's been a huge effort. And we are continuing to monitor that very, very carefully, and we'll report out as necessary. But right now the news seems to be good. So next slide. So finally, this has been an enormous effort by city staff, but it's also been an enormous effort from the community. From a communications perspective, we've used all of our available channels, including our website. We stood up a special flood prep website that's received over 12,000 hits. We've been doing email blasts, social media posts. We've used Nextdoor, we've used Nixle to alert on things like road closures and sandbag availability. And then we've been working with the county to use SMC Alert to provide updates on the creek. I want to point out this picture on the top right. We appreciate a number of members of the community who have stepped up in response to the unprecedented rain that we've gotten over the past couple of weeks. We've gotten 42 more drains adopted from our Adopt a Drain program. And that's a big piece of making sure that our stormwater system works, is keeping the drains cleared. So when our residents and our community members adopt a drain and keep it clean, it's a huge help to the city. So we appreciate that. And just for context, 42 adopted recently. We had 7 all of last year. So really appreciate the community stepping up and everything they've done. So in terms of assistance, last week, we submitted an initial damage assessment to the county. And how I would describe that is, we had a very short period of time to go through the city and determine a very high level amount of damage. We did that along with all of the other cities in the county. We submitted that to the county, and the county submitted to the state. And we've learned that we've basically passed the first step, which is it has been deemed throughout the county that there is enough damage that we will be considered for state assistance. So we don't have any more information than that, but we've crossed a first critical step in getting assistance to the community for the damage that's been caused. As far as FEMA goes, I think there's 2 aspects of the FEMA response. The first is response, and the second is recovery. We're in response mode. Our county is one of the many counties in California that is a disaster area from a response perspective, meaning if we need FEMA assistance, we can get it. I would say for the most part, we've been able to be pretty self-sustaining during this emergency response. Now, the second piece is the recovery piece. At this point, there's only 3 counties in California that have been deemed disaster areas for recovery, and recovery can also consider individual assistance to homeowners. At this point, it's Merced County, it's Sacramento County, and it's Santa Cruz County as of this afternoon that have been considered disaster areas from a recovery perspective. We will continue to stay updated and advocate as best as we can for local recovery. That's about what I know right now. But as we learn more, we will certainly share it with the community. And then finally, what I'm looking for council to do is to confirm the directives I've issued as the Director of Emergency Services in response to the declared emergency. So really the one thing I'd like for council to affirm is that for that second storm, again, we were projecting 3 to 4 inches of rain. So we proactively, just as the schools closed on that Thursday, we proactively closed some of our operations. We closed City Hall a little bit early. We closed the library a couple early, and we canceled some recreation programs. Many employees were able to continue to work, whether it be on site or at home, but we did have employees who were scheduled to work certain shifts at either the library or City Hall or in recreation. They weren't able to work those shifts. I've directed that they be paid as if they did work their shifts so that they were not harmed by decisions that we made in response to the storm. And I'm requesting council confirmation of that decision. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from council? Councilmember Hedges.
The investigation of the third party, when do we expect that information to come in? I hope sooner rather than later.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we've engaged the third party. They are currently working. I don't have a timeline. I understand the desire to get this done sooner rather than later. We do want to make sure that it is thorough and it is comprehensive. If it needs any peer review and community engagement. So, again, I understand council's desire to get this back as soon as possible, but I also know that we want it to be as comprehensive and thorough as possible so that that we're able to give the community as best a response as we can to this.
I think community involvement would be necessary because there were a lot of community members involved. And by the way, I want to thank you. I sent you an email yesterday from a woman who said there were several blocked sewers in her area, and they were out there today cleaning them. So thank you. And she called me. She's very happy with the response. I also would like to see if through this third party, if they have the ability to give us an assessment of what they think having a stormwater fee would do to help us mitigate any of the flooding in the future.
I mean, we've done that work. I think that, we've already had a third party come in. We know the needs. We've surveyed on a fee structure to address the needs in both, the lagoon and upstream to the feeders of the lagoon. The survey was pretty lukewarm on whether that people were willing to pay that fee. So at the time, council directed us to go out and do some education and outreach. I think that is getting back underway. We put that on hold because we did not want to try to do that education outreach while we also had a tax measure on the ballot, Measure CC, which passed in November. So we're getting back underway with that education and outreach piece, and we'll come back to council, I think, later this spring with that. But I think, ultimately, we know the needs.
I think the storm was a great educational tool for if it didn't serve any other purpose. And I think, publicizing what has happened and getting that information out and how it can be mitigated would be important now while it's on everybody's mind.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions from council? Oh, Deputy Mayor Nash.
Thank you, Mayor Lee. City Manager Corbett, number one, city staff did a tremendous job 24/7, but also the residents and the businesses, I think we all pulled together tremendously. And can you give us any more information about the form the community input will take as part of this postmortem? Because I think it's a way to share stories, heal. I was impressed with how so much of the comment at our last council meeting from people who had been severely damaged by the floods wasn't burning. It was, we want to solve the problem for future. So I'm hoping that you're thinking about having very robust community input all over the city.
Yes. I can't define specifically what that looks like right now. Again, we're just coming out of sort of emergency response mode. It's been a difficult 18 days for everyone. But we're going to have the third party report done, and we're going to go out and do community engagement. I don't know specifically what that looks like, but I'm imagining some specific neighborhood meetings to go through the results of the report and get input from the neighbors.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And absolutely, staff and the police and the firefighters, everyone went 150% above. It was quite impressive. And I guess my other question is, will this post-mortem or the recommendations of the third party include where we might look outside of the county for funding opportunities? We are all talking about there's so much money coming in for climate change and this and that from the federal government. But I think this is a really important opportunity to look at where could we get funding opportunities in addition to the funding we come up with ourselves.
I don't know if this report specifically will cover that, but we are always looking for funding opportunities outside of what we can do locally. We do engage with a firm out of Washington, D.C. that has been instrumental in getting us significant, very low interest loans from the federal government to do our wastewater treatment plant. We utilize that firm. They've also been working with us on grant applications for additional grade separations. So any federal money that becomes available and presents an opportunity for us, we have someone on it who we work with, and we have a grant writer as well, a third-party grant writer. So, that is something, again, this study may not address that specifically, but that is something we do dedicate resources to and have our ear to the ground for funds that are available for those sorts of things.
Great. And I'm sure you will be prioritizing this with that company. Thank you.
I'd like to echo everyone's sentiment about thanking you all for your great response in the storms after the 31st storm. Couple questions. Does the SFPUC give us any financial contribution for the upkeep of San Mateo Creek as it is overflowing into San Mateo Creek from their reservoir?
Not that I'm aware of. I think, the SFPUC and Crystal Springs Reservoir, they view that as a water storage facility and not a flood control facility. There is a constant flow into San Mateo Creek, whether it's a minimum flow per fish and game, or whether it's to help drain the creek when it gets, drain the reservoir when it gets to a higher level. But ultimately, the creek itself is our responsibility in making sure that water can flow freely in it. But with that said, as the level in the reservoir has risen, between the Hillsborough and ourselves and the county, the SFPC has been very responsive to us. We've had regular check-ins. They've posted some things online that have allowed us to monitor the level of the reservoir. And so it's been very good to be able to engage with them. And I think that the result of this is that we will have a closer working relationship going forward. So we'll be able to get information, in a more timely manner when future significant wet weather events happen.
Capacity of the lagoon and dock levels. So is part of the third-party study going to be that we're going to look at what the capacity of the lagoon is now versus what it was when the dock levels were originally set? Or is that something that also needs to be studied?
I'll ask as Public Works Director Azalea Mitch to address that.
That would be part of a longer term assessment. So one of the comments I made at the last council meeting was that we do have to reevaluate the storage, the bathymetry. I think some of you may have noticed a lot of sediment was deposited during these last few events. So we know that the bathymetry has changed. We don't know how the storm has impacted that. To clarify, the upper levels of the lagoon that's what provides the storage. But obviously with time, the sedimentation will creep into that capacity and volume. So I do believe that we do need a comprehensive assessment to revisit the bathymetry, to reassess the storage, and to also look at what this facility was designed for, but also, what modifications can be made for, events such as these. Within 3 hours, we saw the 100-year event, and within 12, the 200. We just, the systems are not designed for that, the extremes. So it's an opportunity for us to evaluate the sedimentation, for us to also evaluate our levees. And like I said, in terms of looking at climate change and extreme weather.
I'll ask a follow-up question if you don't mind. When I met with the lagoon people a couple weekends ago, one of the comments was that the Army Corps of Engineers requires us to do a certain amount of dredging as part of maintenance to have the lagoon. Do you know if there's truth to that, and do we have a program in place to meet their criteria? if so?
There's no requirement from the Army Corps. We need permits to dredge. The lagoon for the city is a flood control structure. And so what FEMA looks at is the upper levels in terms of volume and the capacity of the pump station as a system. So no, we would need definitely permits to dredge, a lot of permits. And we also have to assess the type of contamination in those sediments, to assess disposal and so forth. But there's no permit requirement to dredge that as we speak, except for our own flood control needs.
And I have one more question, and I think you're probably the one he's going to direct it to anyways, so I'll just go with it. I've had a lot of feedback from a lot of people that the drains have been cleared, and they've been very thankful. There are a few people that I keep seeming to hear from that are saying that their drains aren't being cleared. Are we still using the drain form? Like, so if people are filling out the form that the drain isn't cleared, are we still using that as a, okay.
Yes, we are currently, it's a phone, it's calling the, calling the line. I can, share with you that, we have a staff of 20 for the entire city.
Yeah.
When we look at maintenance workers. So
a lot of drains.
And sometimes we may be there, but folks may not see us during. Yeah.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Just one quick question for Mr. Corbett. Thank you for bringing up some updates on our move to obtain potential funding from the state and the FEMA status we currently have and the distinction between response and recovery. Should the city qualify for funds from the state or FEMA or both? Where could the public look to? Where will that be published? Will it be on the storm prep page, or is there a way we know we can look?
Once we have more information about, should we become eligible or should residents become eligible for either state or federal assistance or both, depending on what that process looks like, we would come up with a comprehensive communication strategy to make sure that people were aware of it. So it would be certainly we would update the webpage, but I think we would do more proactive communications through all of our different communications channels to make sure that, people were aware that this was available. So we would use basically every tool that was available to us.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Drew, for the presentation. It was really comprehensive, and I appreciate all the pictures and videos as well. I have a question about, as we move from sort of triage and emergency response mode to hopefully sort of switching gears into a learning and integrating mode. In addition to the third-party evaluation, do you envision sort of an internal working group forming or standing up some sort of interdepartmental task force that would look at, how we can really take hold of the moment to do public education, for example, to encourage folks to not just adopt 42 drains, but let's 142 drains, right? And I guess, I hope as we kind of peek out of the end of this crisis that we can look to, look even further and dig a little deeper, even though we are very low resource, and I totally appreciate that, but not miss a moment in terms of the public education and the public engagement opportunities that I think are really immediate and really pressing. And also, I think that conversation, the broader conversation about community resilience, the broader conversation about funding infrastructure for resiliency and policy changes, protocol updates that might be required. And so maybe I'm missing what the full scope of the third-party analysis is, but I'm not, I guess I'm not, that's my question, is that, I see some components that I don't hear are part of the plan moving forward that could be. And so I'm wondering, where are those slated in, or are they?
Sure. I think the third-party study is going to, I think, predominantly focus on our facilities and their operation, and if they operated as they were expected. Was there pre-work that could have been done? Is there something that could have been done that wasn't done? Did things happen as we would expect them to happen given the amount of rain?
So it's retrospective.
Predominantly, yeah. So
Okay.
Going forward, though, I mean, I think that, as was mentioned, now is the time to talk with the community about our stormwater facilities and their adequacy.
Inadequacy, yes.
And that's what we're doing. With the work that we've been done. So it is timed well, unfortunately. I think, with respect to some of the other things that you mentioned, yeah, I mean, we're certainly looking internally. I mean, it's one of the things that's been a challenge is, the unpredictability of the forecast and kind of the effect of climate change. And is this our future going forward, where we have 6 years of drought and then we have a tremendous amount of rain that we can't handle in a short period of time? I would like to avoid having to open up the EOC every time it rains. But with that said, I mean, I think we put together some protocols that the next time we're having a significant rain event forecast, significant rain event, we're probably going to put some of those protocols in place. Maybe it's not the EOC opening up, but some of the things that we did with proactively scheduling public works for, a 24/7 schedule, doing extra dispatch, things that helped make sure that we were able to respond as timely as we could to different things. Yeah, we're going to have to, these are things that we're not just going to set aside going forward. These are tools that we have available to us, for future significant events. It just becomes a matter of when we utilize those tools. And I think, similarly, we have to seize the momentum from these rains on outreach and engagement about ways that everyone can participate in, making sure that we are resilient as possible during these sorts of wet weather events.
If I, through the.
Yes, please.
I just want to remind you all that we do have the stormwater fee project. We have a public outreach consultant working with us so that we can begin development, the public outreach for that effort. It's unfortunately, right, the time is now. And so we are working with them on developing that strategy to not only, we will be resurveying the community and getting ready for that effort in the fall in terms of the mailed-in ballot. But we do have a public outreach firm on board working with us as we speak on that message.
Thank you. And some of this is our job as well, as community leaders, encouraging proactively, to adopt drains, organizing cleanups. I have to say, I've never seen downtown North B Street as clean as it was, this week. There was not one scrap of litter on the street. And many community members have organized, many neighborhoods have regularly organized cleanups. I can tell you, I've never seen a city staff ever litter our streets. Not once. So there are some things that we can do as a community as well, and as community leaders. And for folks, I think the question has come up also about, how do we assess damages, not knowing, what the full scope is or what support will be coming to us. There's always there's always our emails available. There's always our cell phones available. And it's very beneficial for us council members to understand directly from community what the direct impacts businesses and residents are experiencing with pictures and documentation. And documentation is very important, which is another message I think that, I hope we are all consistently sending. I'm getting a little bit into remarks, so I'll pull back and open up public comment, please.
Thank you very much. We have two speakers in the room. We'll call on first. On the Zoom line, if you could please raise your hand now if you want to comment on this item. And we'll come back to that number. Right now I have two in-house and two on the Zoom call. So let's go ahead and start with our first speaker, Megan Aljamea.
A quick thank you to Mr. Hedges, Mr. Newsom, and Mr. Lorraine for coming out to our property to meet with us and for the subsequent conversations since then. And also Mrs. Nash, who I will be meeting on Monday to show her East Laurel Creek. And a huge thank you to the public workers who are at our house almost daily cleaning the trash rack. My husband Sammer spoke at the January 3rd meeting regarding the significant flooding at our home on December 31st along East Laurel Creek. This could have been prevented had the design and size of the culvert been properly designed to begin with. We've been displaced for over 2 weeks and we still do not have central heating. I would also like to mention my husband and the 3 friends who stood knee deep in water on New Year's Eve for hours, pumping out 4 to 5 feet of water from our crawl space twice, are still dealing with repercussions from that day. They're still covered in an oozing rash that has required several doctor's appointments and antibiotics. There needs to be a long-term solution to address the flooding at the Laurel Creek. While I understand the December 31st storm was described as a 100 to 200-year event, the flooding may have been prevented. If drainage structure is undersized, it will fail to transfer water at peak drainage times adequately. Our culvert is too small. The culvert does not follow the flow of the stream and makes a sharp, unnatural turn into the culvert, which slows the flow. This is not the first flood of Laurel Creek. In the early 80s, there was a proposal to shift the culvert, which was denied, and here we are again, flooded. Along with poor design, we now have extremely saturated ground. We have been close to flooding several times in the last 2 weeks, with much less rainfall than December 31st. For context, as you all know, about 5 inches of rain, and the creek rose an estimated 11 to 12 feet in those 4 hours. Since then, some scattered data just based on our observations. January 9th, it rose 8 feet with 0.38 inches of reported rain. January 14th, it rose 8.5 feet with 0.65 inches of reported rain. January 16th, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 5 a.m., it rose 9 feet. We were 2 feet from flooding Laurelwood Drive again. Reported rainfall that day was 1.2 inches. Our house won't survive another big event or even a smaller event at this point. I spoke to Steve in Public Works today about relocating the city entrance to the trash rack on Laurelwood Drive, as it currently blocks 1/2 of the trash rack due to the massive amounts of debris under the city staircase that the workers cannot get to. I ask that this be a priority before the next rainfall. I would also like for people to look into the Dalehurst Dam that our creek flows from. If anything can be done, dredged, I don't know, anything that can be done to create a bigger space for the water. Again, widening and dredging the creek, I don't know if that's possible, but more importantly, widening the culvert with a larger pipe and shifting the direction for a smoother flow. While the event on December 31st was a large event, and may not be expected in the near future, we will flood again. Like I said, with 1.2 inches of rain, we almost flooded on Monday. We just stayed up from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. waiting for it to flood. Thankfully, the rain stopped at 6 a.m. or else we would have been flooded again. So if people could please come out to Laurel Creek and help us figure out a solution, we'd appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next speaker is Kevin Simpson.
Hello again. Thanks for opening this up for comments. I want to thank the city manager for a very good update, which I think covered a lot of bases and actually answered some of the questions that I had here. I want to say that I feel like after December 31st event, the city stepped up in every way. I thought communications improved incredibly. I thought that clarity improved incredibly, and I was really happy to see that. Obviously, we all have a lot more to talk about and to understand and learn from. But what I'm rising to talk about today is that dam. So we have a dam sitting above our heads that sits on the San Andreas Fault that stops all of our, collects all of our drinking water. And I, like many of you, became aware of the alerts about the San Mateo Creek level and how that was related to the dam. And I appreciated the update that the city manager gave. And I was heartened to hear that we have been in close contact with SFPUC and that contact is ongoing. Sorry for the dry throat. What I want to urge us to do is actually go the next level and understand what the implications are in concrete terms of a much bigger water release into San Mateo Creek and how that affects everybody all the way downstream. What would happen if the spillway overtopped, and what would happen if the dam failed? Because that could happen. In 2017, we all know what happened at Oroville. 188,000 people had to be evacuated. And I hate to be, the guy here with the scary tales, but it's up there. It's on a fault line. We now have these catastrophic climate change probably related events. And I'm really concerned that we don't really know what would happen even if the spillway overtopped, where all that water would go. How does that compare to what we've seen down in Gateway Park and along 2nd Avenue and further up the creek? So I really hope that we'll go the extra mile and really sit down with them in a comprehensive way to understand the implications of all three of those kinds of events and what it means for the rest of the community, for Central, for North Central, and for the neighborhoods west of us. Because I think we're kind of sitting on something that we've all been kind of ignoring for. This is the first time in 15 years I've actually thought about the fact that the creek beautiful creek I moved in next to is actually fed by that dam, and that there's risk with that. So thank you very much for your attention to this issue. And I hope we pursue this in a very concrete way. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker remote is Mariva Godfrey. Go ahead, Mariva.
Yes, good evening. Thank you very much, council members and Mr. Drew and Miss Mitch. Thank you for the report, and I'm gladdened to hear that we're really all looking at preventative action. I do want to put in, and I want to thank very much all the council members for taking their time to come out to the south end of Marina Lagoon and see what the existing conditions, which are changed conditions that we have been talking about diligently and regularly since 2018 and MLAC even longer. So one of the things that I really want to emphasize is that existing conditions in protocols in place don't really connect to the reality of the moment, because on December 31st, one of the things that happened was that the third water level drop measuring 1.5 feet was scheduled to take place in January and not in late December. So although the level 2 atmospheric storm was well predicted, there seemed to be no preventative action taken by Public Works to manually begin the pumps that drained the lagoon in preparation for such a storm, whether you knew how much water or not was coming down. What is clearly evident, which is a very positive, is that the proactive step on the third, prior to the second, even stronger atmospheric river storm, won the day and kept most of San Mateo from flooding again. Changing conditions always necessitate a review and revision of existing protocols. Don't want you guys to be stuck with the schedules. And I say that emphatically right now because you're now at below winter levels. And in February 15th, the existing protocols say that the waters are going to be raised again 1.5 feet. And that cannot happen. It's got to be mitigated and contingent with weather patterns and storms, whether you know exactly how much rain or not is going to fall. The south end of the lagoon simply cannot contain the amount of water that it used to, and we're actually impaired and not serving the rest of the lagoon the water skims right over the surface of the sediment and floods other parts of the lagoon. So please, prevention and not adhering to schedules and really looking at how we change this system while more permanent fixes like dredging and excavating the lagoon take place. Laurel Creek did not flood on the 4th, and that was because everything was down at the proper levels. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Rick Sakuda.
Good evening. First off, I would like to thank our city council members, all 5 of you who came down to the lagoon during the flood event and after the flood event. You gave us your unlimited time. You listened carefully to our concerns, and you promised to follow up. You stayed until everyone was heard and there was nothing left to say. Thank you very much. A quick report on the lagoon. After our concerns and our analysis of the causation of the flooding were expressed, the lagoon has not risen any more than 1 foot, but with one exception where it rose 4 feet during the night, and we are expecting an explanation for that. But our communications directly with Public Works remains blocked, so we have no way to analyze why we had this singular raise of the lagoon, which has led to some anxiety for our residents. I would also like to thank City Manager Drew Corbett, who has made himself available for emergency reporting from the lagoon and trading periodic updates on conditions. Thank you, Drew. I know you have more important things to do for our city, but we appreciate that. The community has great interest in this process, but this agenda item was listed under old business, and it was unclear as to the scope of this discussion here tonight. So we're unaware of it. I know that there are many more people who would have wanted to be involved or would have liked to have commented. So nothing else I can say on that, but it's the way it was listed on the agenda was somewhat confusing to us. So we still remain patient. We know how the Marina Lagoon impacts flood control for 75% of the city. I think now everybody knows, and that's, we're all in this together. But the proactive protocols that was mentioned by the previous speaker have protected the lagoon and the city for 30 years. And they've also protected the city for the 17 days subsequent to the flooding on December 31. So I want to emphasize that our community, and I believe the city, are expecting a full, impartial, and inclusive report as to the events leading to the flooding of Marina Lagoon and other areas of the city on December 31, and a permanent solution to this issue. We would like to be a part of that discussion proactively in the beginning and not be handed a report at the end when there's too late to take into account our input. And we'd like to know how and when this will all occur through our representative, Rich Hedges. But thank you all very much. And we appreciate all the hard work that's gone into keeping the city dry. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no other speakers.
Thank you, City Clerk. So with that, we'll close public comment. And would anyone like to make remarks, or are we ready to? Councilmember Hedges.
Yeah, just a little history. I made a presentation to United Homeowners early fall with a map of what used to flood before the lagoon was dug. And Mike Nash, our president, made the comment, oh, Baywood flooded. Well, guess what? The exact flood on that map flooded with San Mateo Creek. So those maps are accurate. And some of that was recreated in the flood event on the 31st. I just want to make it clear how much this lagoon is silted. So my association, I have about 30 volunteers, and twice a year, we clean up driftwood and everything that we can reach in the lagoon. And that's about 2 dumpster loads just for one small part of the shoreline. There is tremendous amount of runoff, not only in the creeks where they've started to silt up, but also in the lagoon. And Rick Sakuda, who just spoke, actually had a fairly large company that did stormwater prevention for construction sites. And he has shown a lot of photos here of construction sites prior to us changing our protocols on protecting the environment of the runoff from construction sites that weren't properly being managed, long before the tenure of anybody here on the city that are here now, of the officials. So I just want to emphasize that the basic building block of flood prevention here is starting to wither away with the silting. And so I think, as was stated very clearly, rain falls everywhere, but sediment comes down to the vehicle that helps prevent flooding. Thank you.
Anyone else? Comments?
So I do just want to thank City Manager Corbett and all the city staff for the tremendous amount of work that's been put in to help keep our city from experiencing another event like we had on New Year's Eve. I did get a note from a constituent that reached out asking about, what can be done, similar to, I think, what Councilmember Newsom brought up. And I think as council members, we've been trying to inform people about the resources that are available, the phone line, the online form, and give people a sense of what resources are being put to bear on the city. And indeed, I got a note mentioning Public Works came out, took out a tremendous amount of debris in the area. Of course, we have folks all around the city who may be older and are wondering, how on earth am I going to manage everything that might be around my property in these creek areas, and to have Public Works respond in the way they have, and of course, Consolidated Fire and Police and everybody who's been out there is being seen and appreciated. I look forward to the debrief and continuing this conversation and learning all that we might be able to do to protect our city going forward. And I'll just note that I shifted my adopt a drain location to District 5. So if you would like to join Council Member Low Drain, there's information on the city website and it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Nash.
Thank you, Mayor Lee, and thank you, Councilmember Lorraine, for moving your drain. You can add a second one. That's fantastic. As I said before, thank you so much to all the staff and people we didn't even know what they were doing. Tremendous work throughout. We're all here to learn, but also thank you to all the residents, the businesses, and people who came from other parts of the peninsula to help out. This really was an opportunity for all of us to be right there together, help each other, but understand the emergency that we have. And as many of my fellow council members have said, it's only when something really bad happens that people wake up and their brains open up. So let us take advantage of that opportunity. I look forward to hearing about the postmortem and getting our community, everyone involved up front, as Mr. Sakuda said, so that it really is a community postmortem. I think others have also said that climate change, as we know, is here, it is real, and these 100-year-old events are going to become more typical. And as Public Works Director Mitch said, we need to really take a look at our infrastructure and what's going on and how do we change that. And this is an opportunity. And we're about ready to go into our Blue Sky Strategic Initiative planning on the 11th of February. I'm hoping that this is an issue we can really take forward. There's lots we can do right now, but there's a lot we're going to have to do for a very long time to come that we all can come together and work on. And then finally, I think it's also an opportunity for us all to take a good look at emergency preparedness and communication, not just around the flood, but around everything. And do more education, as we've said, but also maybe doing some practices. You know, we practice earthquake drills. Why not practice other types of drills? This is reality and we need to be prepared for it. So I look forward to supporting staff and others in their evaluation. And as others have said, this is a citywide problem. Arroyo Creek, as Councilmember Hedges said, flooded over in a way it is not flooded over in many, many years. And people were shocked, but they also recognize that this is not something that is a once in a lifetime occurrence. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to the community members. And let's keep being constructive and figuring out what we can do going forward.
Thank you. I'm so glad you raised blue skies, and I just wanted to remind everyone that on February 11th, please mark your calendars. Typically, we start in the morning. It's about a half-day event, and it will be posted forthcoming soon. And so Blue Skies is an opportunity for the community and council to talk about what our strategic priorities are. And a lot of the ideas and goals that have surfaced in this conversation through this event are things that each council member has an opportunity to put forward in their own specific priorities that they will present. And then, and it's always very beneficial to hear from community how, what's important to you, what is your long-term vision, what kind of changes would you like to see us make and how to resource them. So that will be on February 11th, starting in the morning, and we'll make sure to post the specifics of that event soon. I want to just reiterate my deepest appreciation to our city staff and reaffirm what I hope everyone knows is that our staff, our employees are our essential workers. We would have never been able to weather any of what happened if it weren't for the dedication of our city staff. And there are a couple highlights I wanted to share just to make sure that everyone really can appreciate how much true public service came forward in a moment when the city really needed it. So I have some stats here to share. So as our city manager said, we distributed 1 million pounds of sand. But sand alone doesn't even come to fruition if it weren't for the people who delivered it, right? And so I want to give a shout out to the staff that were here overnight. This is unprecedented, has never happened, where we stood up a 24/7 operation on January 4th and January 9th. That's 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And that included 10 field staff, 4 park staff who helped and worked side by side with the public works staff, 2 administrative staff who covered the night shift, 5 operators who covered the night shift at the wastewater treatment plant. And that doesn't even include our public safety, our firefighters and our police officers and our dispatchers. So it was an all hands on deck situation. And I know for a fact that some of our city staff haven't slept in days. And they're here for us. They're putting in this time to save our city and to support us when we need them. And they do it out of a true love for the city and this community. And that in no way erases our responsibility to take a look at, what we did right and what we could do better. But I hope that everyone can appreciate that these are real people with real lives, the sick kids, that were underwater themselves, that were driving 2 hours, through rain to get here to save our city. That everyone here, has a beating heart. So this city is run by actual people with actual stories and real names, real families. And so their dedication is the engine that powers the city. And I, for one, am so grateful for their tremendous work. So thank you so much from our council to you. And we'll keep at it. We're going to keep working hard. That's what we're here to do. So with that, I would like to ask for a motion to confirm the directives from our emergency service director.
I'll make that motion.
Point of order, one of the mentions that Drew had was the payment of employees who were unable to report to work. Are we including that in this motion?
That's included.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes.
Do you need a second? Or
I gave the second. So, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Hedges,
Yes.
Mayor Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Lorraine,
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Wonderful. So before we end the meeting, we turn to reports and announcements. Are there any reports and announcements from the council?
An inquiry for my fellow council members. I've been looking ahead at the upcoming city council meetings. Currently, Juneteenth is not a recognized holiday by the city staff. Their union doesn't require them to be off, so they're working that day. But I was wondering if you guys would be open to the concept of moving that meeting from Juneteenth in observation of Juneteenth to Tuesday, June 20th. And just wanted to put that in front of all of you.
Is that something that we need to do? We decide on the dais right now, or is that something that we need to talk about at a future meeting?
I think this is something you could bring back at a future meeting to adopt or revise regular meeting schedule for the council.
So noted. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Hedges.
I just wanted to support what Mayor Lee said about the city staff. I actually was at San Mateo Creek watching our staff remove 4 dump trucks load of trash from the gates there. They were working very hard.
Okay. Speaking of Juneteenth, I wanted to make sure that we gave a little bit of promo to the Dominique Hotchkiss Black History Museum and Learning Center, which has issued a warm invitation to everyone to attend their pop-up museum, celebrating things everyone should know about African-American world history, remembering the past, shaping the future. They are having an event on Thursday, February 2nd, from 6 to 8 p.m. in Redwood City at 890 Jefferson Avenue, the former Cost Plus World Market. So that's an open invitation to everyone to please attend and promote this as well. It's a great traveling museum that we're lucky to have. My second announcement is to share that the community has been instrumental in pulling together resources, financial resources, which are now close to $56,000 in private donations coming from many of our headquartered companies, as well as nearly 100 community members who have made personal donations. So we have a real opportunity as a city council to show leadership in meeting the moment and looking at what a fair allocation would be for the city to meet and match, or potentially more than match, those funds to create a combined flood relief fund that could be distributed fairly through what I would hope to be a third-party administrator and nonprofit partner, and get some help into the hands of our businesses and residents that are facing serious financial hardship as a result of the flood and storms. So I ask for council to consider agendizing as quickly as possible an item for staff to come back to us with a budget analysis for a potential allocation, as well as some options for administration of a flood relief fund. Can I ask for council input at this time? I need to count to 3. Deputy Mayor Nash.
Thank you, Mayor Lee. I would definitely support agendizing this. And I would also ask that the discussion include, as you started to talk about, the operation of that, the allocation, the evaluation of how that money is shared. But I definitely would support agendizing it. And I know that organizations like Samaritan House have already been doing this for the San Mateo Strong Fund and for the fund currently happening as a result of what happened in Belmont during the floods. So that would be a good place to look.
I support it as well.
As do I.
Wonderful. Thank you. Does staff have clarity and direction?
No, we can bring something back at the next meeting if that suits council.
Yes.
Okay.
So the next week. Or is it the 23rd?
February 6th.
When are we meeting then? Oh, could we tack it on? Patrice is giving me luck. Okay, I withdraw the request.
Yeah, it would be difficult to get that analysis done and agendized by Thursday. It's Tuesday.
Okay. There we have it. So it'll come back to us on February 6th.
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. My goal in life is not to upset Patrice. So thank you. Thank you so much for supporting that. And thank you so much to the community. Literally every single company that I approached said yes. Everyone said yes. How can I help? How much? And I said, as much as you can give. And we have gotten donations at the $5 range and at the $10,000 range. And so people are truly giving what they can. And I hope it will make a difference. And as we continue learning about what potential relief may be forthcoming, there's always the possibility that this could be it, that what we do and the decisions that we make in the next couple of weeks might be what happens and all that can happen in terms of providing direct relief. And so I hope I appreciate the gravity of the situation, and I so appreciate the council's support on this. So thank you.